Hello guys, welcome back. My name's Nathan and today we're going to be looking at one potential breakout player for every single NHL team. Now there's a bunch of players that have stepped in the NHL that have just not quite broken out into fantastic players just quite yet. But that's what we're going to be looking at in today's video. Players that I think will break out in this upcoming 2021 season. So, who do I think are going to be the biggest breakout players this next season, and who do I see as the biggest breakout player for every single NHL team? Watch till the end for all my predictions, all my picks, and of course, hit that big red subscribe button for more videos just like this one. Now, before we get into the glorious rankings, we had 25k subscribers. That's pretty freaking cool. Thanks so much, guys. Definitely appreciate it. So we're going to start out today, of course, with the Anaheim Ducks, work our way down to the Winnipeg Jets last but not least, and starting us with the Anaheim Ducks and their breakout player next season, I see it being draft pick Sam Steele. Now, Sam Steele has been in the Duck system for quite a while now, and he's a player that I think is just on the fringe. He's a player that did get a lot more ice time this past season, still put up some pretty good point numbers, but I think that's a guy that hasn't really made as much of an impact as he should so far. But that's a player that has some great skating, great overall offensive abilities, and I think that's a guy that could be a top 6 player for the Ducks in the next few seasons, and I think that will start this next year in 2021. Then going on to the Arizona Coyotes, there's a couple of pretty good options here, but for me, it's Barrett Hayton. Now, I do want to say that Chychrun, to me, has already graduated from this breakout status. I think he did that this last season in 2020, especially with his defensive skills. But I think Barrett Hayton is a guy that will get full NHL ice time this upcoming season and will definitely earn it. I'm not sure how high he will be in the lineup, but with the way the Arizona Coyotes offense is looking like right now, I don't know if there'll be too much competition for him, especially on that power play. Then going on to the Boston Bruins, I have Jack Studnicka. To me, Studnicka is a guy that is primed for a breakout season. Was brilliant in the AHL this past season. I think got a couple of games played with the Bruins as well. So he's got a little bit of experience under his belt. But that's a player who I think should get at least maybe a third-line spot in the Bruins next year. At least I'm hoping so. And I think he can bring a lot of great offensive value to the Bruins. I'm not sure how high he gets in the lineup because he is a center. He could end up playing wing because of that, because you already got Krejci and Bergeron, of course, and Charlie Coyle. So I think for him it'll be a little bit of an adjustment, but I think eventually he will be one of the best players on the Bruins, especially on that power play as well. Then going on to the Buffalo Sabres, I have Henri Jokiharju as their next breakout player. And I'm a big fan of Henry as a guy who was drafted in 2017 late in the first round. Obviously, he was with Chicago and then got traded to the Buffalo Sabres. He had a pretty alright year, got more responsibility in the NHL, which is great to see. But I think this next season is where Jokiharju kind of really starts to break out. Not just getting more ice time, but being a lot more responsible, being a lot more ready for the NHL competition, and I think will unlock some of those offensive abilities that I think he does have. Then going on to the Calgary Flames, I have Dylan Dubé. Dylan Dubé is a guy that really was fantastic in the playoffs for the Flames. I think it was like a half a point per game throughout their playoff stint in 2020, which is very good to see. I think Dubé is a guy that's just ready for the NHL at this point. Had a pretty good stint with the Flames last year, but it wasn't the most ice time in the world. I think he'll get a lot more responsibility this upcoming season, and I hope so, because his offensive game is going to help the Flames quite a bit. Then going on to the Carolina Hurricanes, some people might make an argument that this guy is already broken out. To me, I'm not sure if he's fulfilled all of his potential yet when it comes to breaking out in the NHL, that being Marty Necas of the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, Necas is a guy that had a pretty fantastic year, but due to the absolute just overload of rookies, was kind of shunned a little bit. I think Necas is a guy, though, that will have an excellent career with the Canes. The problem is the Canes have an insane forward group, so it is obviously harder for him to get ice time. But that's a player that I think is just a great overall forward, great responsibility as well. But that's a player that I think will unlock some more offensive skills next season and will get more responsibility as well by Carolina. Then going on to the Chicago Blackhawks, this one was a tough one to fit, because I would have said Kirby Dach, but he's already kind of broken out a little bit, especially after these past playoffs where he was pretty fantastic. So my vote is going to go to defenseman Ian Mitchell. Now, Ian Mitchell is a guy that's over the NCAA over the past couple seasons has been pretty fantastic, and I think that's a guy that will likely transition to the NHL this next season. I'm hoping so. He doesn't really have too much competition on that Chicago Blackhawks D-core, and I think Mitchell is a guy that will eventually become a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. I'm not sure if he'll be a top pairing guy, but a guy that can certainly pitch it offensively and have great overall skating skills. That's a player, though, that I think is going to be really good on Chicago, and with Adam Boqvist will be two guys that defensively will bring some much-needed youth and skill to that blue line. Next up, going to the Colorado Avalanche, next breakout player, I have Alex Newhook. Now, I would have said Connor Timmins, but I'm really not sure how much ice time he's actually going to get next season, but that's also a good candidate. To me, Alex Newhook, though, is the next potential breakout, an awesome player for the Avalanche. I think Newhook is a guy that will be a top 6 center in the NHL, at least from what it's looking like right now. This past season, the NCAA was just absolutely dominant, and he's still super young. He doesn't really even have to play with the Avs this next season if he doesn't want to. He can still play in the NCAA, but that's a player that I think, even if he plays in the NCAA again, the season after, he's going to be an awesome player. Could be in the race for the Calder Trophy, I think, and offensively just has so much tools. His skating is absolutely elite, and I think that'll fit right in on that Avalanche forward group. Then going on to the Columbus Blue Jackets, I have Liam Foudy. Now, he looked very good versus the Leafs in that playoff series and in the playoffs in general, with a little bit of limited ice time, but it got better as the playoffs went on. I think Liam Foudy is a guy that will get some pretty big ice time responsibilities this next season, but a fantastic skater, some improving skill, I think, and improving overall game. That's a player that I think will be a middle 6 player for the Blue Jackets. I'm not really sure where his potential lies, but I see him being a pretty big impact player for them this next season. Then going on to the Dallas Stars, my favorite team, to me, it's Thomas Harley 100%. Now, I maybe would have said Jake Onger if they didn't re-sign Hudobin, but Thomas Harley is a guy that's just absolutely knocking on the door on that defense group. The problem is, Dallas' defense, at least just player-wise, is loaded. They got a bunch of options, but I think Thomas Harley is a guy that is ready at least to get a few games in the NHL next season. But, I mean, Dallas doesn't really have anybody that's absolutely right there, but I think Thomas Harley is about as close as you get. Then going on to the Detroit Red Wings, to me, is my man, Filip Zadina. Zadina is a guy that I've loved for a long time, and I so badly want to see him succeed. He's a player that just has all the tools in the world. So far, hasn't always put them together, but this past season, especially in his second stint with the Detroit Red Wings, looked pretty solid, and especially on the power play, got his groove going. I think if he can keep that momentum going for Detroit this next season and continue to progress, that's a player that I still think can become a top 6 winger in the NHL and could be that as soon as next season for the Red Wings as well. Then going on to the Edmonton Oilers, I have my man, Kailer Yamamoto. Now, Yamamoto was awesome this last season. He only played I think 27 games, but I'm pretty sure he got 28 points or something. Obviously, playing with Leon Draisaitl helped a lot, but that pair was just a match made in heaven, and it was obvious that Yamamoto was finding his groove there. I don't really even care if he plays with Leon Draisaitl. As long as Yamamoto is finding his groove and continuing to progress, I love it. I think Yamamoto is an amazing skater, great overall skill set too, on the shorter side, but when you're playing with Leon Draisaitl, it really doesn't matter too much. I'm hoping that pair continues for at least some of the next season, because I just so badly want to see Yami succeed. It needs to happen, baby. Then going on to the Florida Panthers, and this might be a little bit rash, but Anton Lundell. Honestly, if Anton Lundell plays a full season this next season, I'm not too surprised. I'm honestly not too surprised if he ends up going that far with the Florida Panthers this upcoming 2021 season, because he's already been so good in the league. I mean, just today, as I'm recording this, he scored a hat trick. He scored a hat trick. I think he's a point per game down in the Liga, and it is just unbelievable. To me, Anton Lundell was already one of the most NHL-ready prospects in the draft, but that's a guy that I think will be a great fit for the Florida Panthers on that center core, and I think could honestly serve as a third-line center. I could totally see that this next season. Maybe not breaking out into a star player yet, but breaking out into a very solid NHL player and a great overall guy on that locker room. Then going on to the LA Kings, I have Gabriel Vilardi. He's a guy that, I have him on the monitors right here. Gabriel Vilardi was a guy that, at the end of the season, looked pretty fantastic for the LA Kings, which is great to hear. He was suffering with some back issues. It was kind of looking like his career might be over, but then he turned it on its back and just absolutely ran with it. Looked very solid in the AHL as well. I think Vilardi is a guy that now with some added rest, with some more health and some more workouts as well, throughout the offseason. I think that's a guy that could be on that, at least that middle six in LA and get a pretty sizable amount of ice time on that power play too. Then going on to the Minnesota Wild, I have my boy Kirill Kaprizov. Really no explanation needed here. KHL stud and soon to be NHL stud. I think he'll be a top squealer. Honestly, I see him probably being on the second line at least to start out with Minnesota. I think he'll be that good and honestly could win the Calder Trophy. Next up, going to the Montreal Canadiens, I have Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Now, after a fantastic 2019 year where he sort of kind of broke out, but not really, but sort of kind of, he kind of had a weird 2020 where it started off rough, but he ended up being great in the playoffs. I think 2021 is where he will officially break out into a great NHL player. Will probably be on that top six for the Montreal Canadiens and will serve as a center and have all those responsibilities. Kotkaniemi has already put on the weight, he's already put on the bulk, and I think he'll continue that throughout this offseason. That's a player, though, that if he continues to improve, could be a potentially at least a middle six player for the Canadiens, I think, and just be that overall great player that we can see. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, though, is a guy that is knocking on the door to be a great NHL player. He's already, I guess, in 2019 looked very solid, but it wasn't at an elite level yet. And I think Kotkaniemi does have that potential. We'll see what happens and where he actually slots on that forward group, but I think he'll get a lot more ice time, a lot more responsibility, and overall, just look a lot better too. Then going on to the Nashville Predators, I have Dante Fabbro. Fabbro was a guy that I thought was alright this last season, but I think looked a little bit overwhelmed. But I think that's a player that does have potential to be on a top four of Nashville, and he's kind of open with that slot. I mean, they got Yossi, they got Ellis, they got Ekholm, but they don't really have that bona fide number 4 guy. I think Fabbro could fill in that slot very nicely this next season and take on those responsibilities as he should. Then going on to the New Jersey Devils, I mean, it's Jack Hughes. I really don't see there being any other logical explanation. I think Blackwood has already kind of broken out a little bit. Ty Smith, yeah, but I don't know if it'll be as much as Jack Hughes will break out this next season. I think Jack Hughes is ready to not be like over a point per game or anything, but be a lot better than he was this last season, get a lot more responsibility, and look a lot more consistent. I think that's a big thing for Hughes, but he's a lot bigger now, he's a lot more sturdy, and I think that'll help him this next NHL season. Then going on to the New York Islanders, to me, it'll be Ilya Sorokin. One of the best goaltending prospects over these last few years is finally coming to the NHL, and their tandem right now is Ilya Sorokin and Varlamov. I think Varlamov will obviously get a lot of games played, but I think Sorokin might make it a little bit more interesting, but I think he'll be fantastic this next NHL season and will be elite as he should. Then going on to the New York Rangers, it's Capo Caco, my absolute boy. Just like Jack Hughes, I see him really doing well and rebounding this next season, getting a lot more responsibility, but honestly, I thought he looked brilliant during the playoffs, was one of New York's best forwards. I'm not sure if it'll be that good this next season, but I do see him being a top 6 player and solidifying himself as that for New York, at least right now. Then going on to the Ottawa Senators, I have forward Drake Batherson. To me, Batherson is a guy that's kind of like a Sam Steele, was awesome in the AHL, kind of knocked on the door in the NHL level, but wasn't quite there yet consistently. But I think he might get a full season in the NHL this next season, or at least I'm hoping so, because the guy has some awesome offensive skills. I think for the Ottawa Senators, he could be a middle 6 player, at least for them this next season. There's not too much competition, but I think especially on that power play, Batherson will solidify himself as a true NHL player. Then going on to the Philadelphia Flyers, I have Morgan Frost, another guy that's kind of AHL, NHL tweener right now, but I think will get to the NHL level and solidify himself as that this next season. I think that's a guy that honestly could be like a second line center in the NHL, especially with his offensive tool set, can definitely reach that, I think. It's not going to happen right now with Philadelphia because they got a pretty good center core, but I do see Morgan Frost at least maybe starting on the wing and then transitioning to that as the years go by, but he's going to be awesome either way, and I think he will be great for Philly. Then going on to the Pittsburgh Penguins, I mean, Samuel Poulin will be my choice, but he's probably not going to be in the NHL for at least another year, I think. Honestly, I see him being in the queue this next season, probably being in the AHL after that. And honestly, I'm not really sure what the timetable is. I still like Poulin a lot, but it's probably going to be a while until Pittsburgh has another great breakout player. Poulin might be that guy, but with the way Pittsburgh's prospect pool is right now, I wouldn't exactly hope for too much. Then going on to the San Jose Sharks, I have Alexander Chmielewski. He's a guy that honestly, prospect pool-wise, goes pretty underrated on San Jose. I like him quite a bit with his offensive skill set. I think that's a guy that could be a middle six player, at least for San Jose. Honestly, could get to a second line level with the way he's progressing. I'm not sure if he gets to that this next season, but I do see him being an NHL player, getting in and out of that AHL system, and fully transitioning with the San Jose Sharks. And they'll need that depth for sure. Then going on to the St. Louis Blues, I have Jordan Kyrou. Kyrou, again, is another guy that's transitioned from the AHL, NHL, AHL, NHL. This next season, I think, will be a full-time NHL player. Most likely on a third line, maybe get some second line time, but it's the Blues, so I don't really think that will happen. We'll see, but I think Kyrou is a guy that will be a middle six player in the NHL. He might not get to that first line potential, but I do see Kyrou being a very solid contributor for St. Louis this next season. Then going on to the Tampa Bay Lightning, I have Cal Foote, another guy that is just bound to make the NHL, and they've lost a little bit of depth on that blue line with guys like Bogosian going away, so I think they will use Cal Foote probably on that bottom pairing with Tampa this next season, but I could see him maybe getting some power play time. We'll see what happens, but I think Hedman and Sergachev probably take that away already. We'll see what happens, but I do see Foote definitely being an NHL player for the Bolts. Then going on to the Toronto Maple Leafs, my pick will be Nicholas Robertson. Now, I was going to say Rasmus Sandin, but honestly, their side on lefty is pretty stacked right now. And I'm not sure if Sandin is going to get a full-time spot. They already got Riley, they already got Muzzin, and Dermott's probably going to be on that third pairing. So I don't really know where Sandin fits, at least this next season. That leaves Robertson as a guy who looked pretty solid in the playoffs, probably might get at least a third line spot, I think, for Toronto. I think that's what is probably going to make the most sense. But I think Robertson is a guy that will potentially be a full-time NHL player next season, especially if the OHL season does not go as planned. But I see Robertson hopefully being a full-time player for the Leafs soon. Then going on to the Vancouver Canucks, I have Thatcher Demko. Obviously with Jacob Markstrom going away, it makes it a lot easier, but I think Braden Holtby is a guy, you'll probably see about a 40-40 split between Demko and Holtby, at least during the regular season. But I think Demko is a guy that will look very good. He was awesome during the playoffs for the Canucks, and I think he'll transition some of that. Maybe not the full extent, but I see Demko being pretty great this next season too. Then going on to the Vancouver Canucks, Vegas Golden Knights, no, not the Vancouver Canucks, the Vegas Golden Knights, I have Cody Glass. Cody Glass is another guy that is just so close, man, so close. He was solid for the Vegas Golden Knights, I thought this past season, but didn't really unlock the full potential with the ice time. I think this next season, though, could be really interesting because Vegas' center system is kind of wide open. I mean, they obviously traded Stastny, they obviously got William Karlsson as the first line center, but you got Chandler Stevenson and really Cody Glass. I mean, that's pretty much it for them. Cody Glass, I think, has a major opportunity to fill that second line center role. He might not be able to reach that level, but I could see him getting the ice time, especially as the season goes on. So that'll be one to keep an eye on right there. Then going on to the Washington Capitals, I have Ilya Samsonov, another goaltender. I mean, he is absolutely wide open. He is definitely going to be the guy, I think, for Washington, but I think Henrik Lundqvist will obviously still get some good games in there, but Lundqvist is mostly serving as the mentor to Samsonov. I think that'll help him a lot too. I think Samsonov obviously is the goalie of the future there in Washington. Will do quite well next season. I'm not sure if he'll win a Vezina trophy, but I think he'll definitely be up there and surprise quite a few people by how good he is already. Then going on to the Winnipeg Jets, I'm not really sure what to put here. I'm going to go with Cole Perfetti, but I would say that Ville Heinola is very close. You also got Christian Vasilevskiy as a potential option there, but I'm still going to say Cole Perfetti. I'm not sure if he plays in the NHL this next season, and I wouldn't exactly bet on it, but if he goes back to the OHL and then plays in the NHL the next season afterwards, I think he's a guy that will definitely break out on that Winnipeg team, probably serve eventually as the second line center, and do quite well there. I think he's going to be good in Winnipeg, and whether it's this season or next, fill a pretty solid role for them. But that'll be it for today, guys. Once again, thanks so much for 25K subscribers. It is greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for all the support over the past few months. It's just been absolutely incredible. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, though. If you're new, of course, hit that subscribe button. Join us on the road to 30K subscribers. Hit that like button, of course, and hit that notification bell. Get all the notifications on all the new videos. Make sure you comment down below, though. What are your thoughts on my breakout players? What do you agree and disagree with? And who do you think will be who do you think will be the breakout player from your favorite NHL team this next season? Let me know down in the comments down below. Share this video with your friends. Get it out there. and click on this card right here to watch all of my predictions and picks videos right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. I love you. Yes, I love you, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.